Well, my job is as a parks planner and greenways manager is to respect the past as we adapt to the evolving communities in which you're passing through. And how do I revisit or reconstruct or restore some of the original trails that we started putting down really in the 90s, at the end of the 80s, early 90s with the Fall Creek Trail, and Pleasant Run was the second major trail that we had put down. One of our guiding documents is we just completed our Greenways, 10-year Greenways Master Plan. This was a composite of over 30 public meetings and various focus groups. This was very much community driven, and it looked at all of our existing greenway systems, and it looked at the future needs of not only Marion County, although that's the limit of our jurisdiction. We were very sensitive to how we were going to connect into the surrounding counties and all of their trails. And this does an excellent job of documenting that whole process. We currently have 63 miles of built trails, and you're on one of them. You're on 8.4 miles of one today. This plan, the vision of this plan is 260 miles, additional new miles of greenway trails. Now, that's not going to happen overnight. It's a vision plan. It could take 20 years. But if federal dollars are available, if philanthropic dollars are available, if we have someone that's kind enough to make a substantial donation, a segment of a trail could be developed, and you need a document like this to help with it. One of the challenges, as I mentioned, is how do we maintain our trails? Because of restrictive or conservative budgets, public budgets, we have to rethink about how we take care of these. Our trails, as you can see, are mostly lawn areas because we no longer have the horticulture staff or the opportunity to maintain shrub beds, daylily beds. We just don't have that. I know George Kessler would have preferred that, particularly in a grove like this of trees, in the catawbas, in the cottonwoods. He probably would have had a shrub layer in here so you'd get some spring color and flowers. But in today's environment, we have to be very conservative. We've also, along the trails, looked for opportunities to plant native prairies to try to reduce some of our mowing along the trails. And that is very good for our wildlife habitat as well as water quality, trying to purify our water before it runs back in our streams. Also, all new development along our trails are looking at bioswales. In the past, what most of our engineers would do in the past would capture the water immediately coming off the road, put it in the drain, and shoot it right to the creeks with no filtration at all. Today's engineering has evolved to the point that they try to capture all the water that's coming off our streets, run it through some type of a bioswale, filter it, give it more time to seep down naturally into our groundwater, and if not, at least filter it, get the sediment loads on some of the toxins before it goes back in our waterways. As we know, there's a major initiative cleaning up our combined sewer overflows. So hopefully our grandchildren will someday have clean water that they can go get a crawdad in them. That's all very important to our greenway system. I mean, it's one thing to ride on the trails, but as we take a break, it would be nice to interact with these waterways a little bit more. Another challenge has been with our greenway signs. The one just happens to be in front of us, the green and white striped one. They're over $700 to replace every time they're vandalized. That one is actually broke. If you go to it, it wobbles back and forth. It's tilted on an angle. They're heavily graffitied. So one of the opportunities in this new document talks about design standards, and it breaks down to how we're going to manage our trails. We come up with a new sign package, and what it is, it's a modular unit, and it's on the more traditional Department of Public Works 4-square pole, and you can, if it is damaged, all you have to do is replace one piece of it. And you'll see two new ones just beyond that green and white sign. There's a little one with a railroad crossing and a little miniature stop sign, and then we'll add some more components to that as time goes on. So we've greatly reduced our cost from $700 and some down to probably $50 or less. And then all these signs can be made up in our Department of Public Works sign shop, which is very critical. Those I always had to send out to a private vendor to be made. So that's a very good. Another key component is this little round circle. It's a very unique thing, and a lot of greenways across the country are starting to move to that. It's a 911 code. So in other words, this one would particularly have PR for Pleasant Run, and it may have a number on it, let's say 211. So God forbid if there ever was an incident, on your cell phone you could call in and say, I'm at PR 211. This immediately goes to the 911. IMPD would have this on their mapping system. They'd know immediately, say, to send an ambulance here, a fire truck, or a police officer. And that's very important when you're on these curvilinear trails. The Monon's a little easier because it's on a grid, but when you get on Pleasant Run, Fall Creek, Town Run, where we have our mountain bike trails, and a lot of our trails as you go through our parks in the woods, like Eagle Creek, as you go through those natural landscapes, this new symbology is really going to help us for emergency response. Our trails are very safe. This is not implying our trails are not safe, but it's another tool that we have as an agency to manage and assure the community we're doing the most we can to make sure they have a safe experience. Our Greenways Board just approved the extension of our trail hours from 5 a.m. in the morning to 12 a.m. at night. We're starting to become a progressive city. Many other cities across the country have 24 hours use on the trails with really no problems at all. And we're starting to get there. We're maturing. I remember the first trail we built, the Monon, it was, and Richard can remember this, the challenges and the conversations we had with the community about the safety and how this was going to increase their property values and not destroy their properties. And unfortunately, those words have rung true over time. Oops, sorry about that. There's been an enormous amount of community participation. Hopefully folks have heard about reconnecting our waterways. It's a grassroots effort. It's composed of professional landscape architects, engineers, artists, sculptors, foundations, residents, civic leaders, and what it is to make us all aware of our waterways across Marion County and trying to reconnect them. So if, for instance, in a spot like this group is willing to come in and maybe create like a little amphitheater or a little seating, put in a drinking fountain, or maybe have a sculpture piece. So not only is it a resting point along our trail, it becomes a destination. And the sculpture piece may be by a unique Indiana artist that we could tell another story. So we're very pleased to have this community input and the resources they all can bring to the table, because we just can't do it alone as a city. Another initiative, as I was talking when you first came up, is the realignment of the Pleasant Run Trail. And this is a really good area. Currently the trail comes up here. As they repurpose the old Coke plant, the opportunity is, you notice there's a little vegetated line there, that's where the creek runs. There's an opportunity to take the trail and run it right through that property again and realign it back to its historic alignment. And Citizen is very cooperative with us. They got a lot of work to do before we get there, but they're open to that. And the benefit of that is, and this work it's called the Industrial Heritage Trail, and it's a partnership with Row, Reconnecting Our Waterways, and Green 3 happens to be the landscape architecture firm that's working on this. But you can see some imagery, and part of it is to use a lot of the industrial site material that's presently there. So again, it's another way of telling a story. Now, it's also a raised platform because we're concerned that the soil is not in the best of condition, so we don't want all our guests, particularly young children, to interact with that soil. So this is a very contained trail as it passes through that site. It's a raised bed, it has rails on it, so that's the only way you can look down to the creek, you can go look onto the landscape, but you're contained within that trail section until you leave the site. Another little detail which may help explain it, it's sort of kind of an industrial type raised bridge, and again, they're trying to incorporate as much of the elements of that industrial plant into the storytelling of that raised platform. So again, cities can't continue to grow. That 260 miles of future trails, we'll never be able to get there unless folks like you and others help us and participate and support us and enjoy these beautiful rides on a day like today.
You said there are 260 miles planned. Are they basically trails along existing roads, or are they going to be new trails, new paths?
Some of it is finishing out the Kessler Park and Boulevard system. If you take, well, let's look at Fall Creek Trail. Right now it ends at Central. It can go from Central all the way down to the White River. And that was originally proposed by George Kessler. If you take the Pleasant Run Trail here, right now it terminates at Garfield Park. It can actually make its way all the way down to the White River. We are currently in the engineering phase of the Eagle Creek Trail, which starts about at the Colts Complex, and would come all the way down to Raymond Street. And there's an existing trail parallel and along Raymond Street we put in a few years ago, which then tie into the South White River Trail, which was built, opened up this spring. And then that ties right into the downtown at the zoo. So a lot of those proposed miles is linking up the last pieces of the George Kessler system. But there's some new ones. Unfortunately, the south side of our county has very little creeks or rivers per se. So there's an inner urban, which would go down the old Meridian, Madison, and try to get into Perry Township and shoot out towards, Decatur. There's the continuation of the South White River. I mean, right now it ends at Raymond. We'd love it to make its way all the way down to Southwestway Park. And that be its final, like Eagle Creek that anchors us in the northwest quadrant, that Southwestway Park, which is 600 plus acres, would anchor that trail there. As we did this Greenways master plan, we weren't only interested in Indianapolis, although that is our jurisdiction. We spoke with all the adjoining counties to make sure that our trails were linking up with their trails and our touch points all aligned. And Richard and folks like that have a much broader view of the state were integral to making sure that everybody was talking and giving us guidance of how you plug in those various pieces. And that's critical as we look for future federal highway funding as well. Anytime we can show a larger connectivity or community support, those funding dollars tend to come in sooner and more frequently and at greater amounts than someone that just has a trail just in the middle and it doesn't connect to anything. We try to take advantage of every opportunity possible to use an abandoned rail corridor. I should have probably spoke, the Pensy Trail, which is our east-west trail that's a block south of the US 40, the old Heritage Trail, is the most current railroad trail that we're developing. We've been acquiring the land for the last 5 years, and Cumberland already has their trail in that will connect. So it'll come from German Church Road all the way into, through Irvington and into Ellenberger Park. In fact, the contract was just awarded about a month ago to extend the Pensy Trail from Shortridge, right there near Bonner Avenue in Irvington, all the way into Ellenberger Park to touch the Pleasant Run Greenway Trail. So now you will be able to come down, get on the Pleasant Run Trail from Arlington. The trail, we have a mile trail built from Arlington to Shortridge. I'm in the process of acquiring the land from Arlington to German Church. I don't own that yet, but that's planned to be built. So yes, the B&O is another great one on the west side. We've been working with the town of Speedway, not fast enough. I know they'd like us to move faster, but we're working with them to acquire the old abandoned B&O and link that corridor, because their trail goes out towards Terre Haute. But we have a segment within the city that we're currently aggressively trying to work on, and land acquisition is my biggest challenge. When you use the federal highway dollars, that's why the Pensy's taken 5 years to go through that land acquisition process. If I had local dollars, I could negotiate a price. If you were the landowner, I could negotiate a price, make you the offer, and we sign the documents, and away we go. With the federal program, I have to do environmentals, I have to get all types of, it's a very long, lengthy process.
Any other questions? We're going to have to go here.
I thank you very much for enjoying our trail.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.